Inspiration for D&D can come from some of the strangest places. A book, a movie, a show about cooking. So in today's video, I'm going to show you how I turned this into this. This week is Dungeon Jam, and as always on this channel, I like to approach things a little different. So I decided to focus on the 5-room dungeon in a totally unique way. Movies as inspiration for dungeons. You see, I think most action or horror movies that you've watched are actually 5-room dungeons, and I'll explain myself. And no, I don't mean that the physical layout of this space station is exactly 5 rooms, but conceptually, there are about 5 spaces or encounters that actually matter in this movie. Speaking of spaces, I feel like I need a change of scenery if I'm going to talk sci-fi horror. Whoa. Okay, better, but where's Peter? Guess it's sent him to my place. Anyway, while recently on a flight trying to figure out what the heck I could say about a 5-room dungeon that hasn't been said 100 times over, I decided to watch Alien Romulus on the tiny screen planted in the back of a stranger's seat in front of me. Huge spoilers for that movie, by the way. If you haven't seen it yet, what are you doing? Go watch it. But as I was watching this movie unfold, I just kept thinking over and over what a perfect D&D style adventure this movie was. The party needs a MacGuffin in order to get out of bad space and into good space, and there are a couple of monsters, traps, and obstacles standing in their way. Alright, so let's get into the format of this 5-room dungeon. I'm not going to go super into detail about each style of room and the formatting because there are probably 100 other videos coming out this week about that exact thing. Okay, so the party arrives at the entrance to the dungeon. We immediately get a sense of the stakes as they learn that in roughly 36 hours, the station is going to crash into the asteroid belt, which is very bad. They need to secure the goober before it's too late, and so the clock is set. So with the central tension and the hook out of the way, let's get into our 5 rooms. Okay, admittedly, this is a sort of horror mystery, so we don't learn the real reason the dungeon has been abandoned until later on, but in my opinion, that's totally fine. Spoiler, it has to do with this guy. For now, the Guardian is in another castle, but the party still needs a special key in order to get inside. Lucky for our players, the GM brought along an awkward android NPC with a magic finger that unlocks doors. No, not that one. This one. As another interesting way to shake things up, the MacGuffin the party needs is actually in the first room, but there's a catch. The goober doesn't have enough magic juice to get where they need to go, and so they briefly discuss the gravity issue that's totally not foreshadowing and press on. The mage takes notes of this subtle clue. Now in this movie, they've actually swapped the order of things, and the challenge comes after the trick, so let's talk about the setback first to follow along with the narrative that's happening. The setback or trap can come in many forms. It can be a literal trap to be avoided, the loss of an item, key, or anything that forces the party to approach the situation differently. The trick or trap in this case is threefold. The party goes into the room to get the goober's magic battery, but when they unplug the cryo juice, the doors lock. The party then says, well, we'll just use the DM PC again to unlock the door, duh. But the DM says, nay, your robot friend needs an upgrade to access this door, and that's going to take time. The trap, however, has only just begun to spring. The DM says, because you remove the cryo juice, the room begins to rapidly heat up, freeing the nightmare fuel baddies from their prisons. The party gets overwhelmed, and with Android Andy doing whatever this is, they turn to other tactics. The mage attempts a strength test and fails. The rogue uses his quarterstaff, but to little effect. A few rounds of fighting go bad, and the GM says, okay, Andy got his upgrade and zaps one of the monsters. Now he can use the key. They run away and lock themselves in the next room. A challenge room might require roleplay, a puzzle, clever thinking, or if something goes wrong, another setback. Whilst locked in the relative safety of the puzzle room, the party is faced with a choice. Free their friend from the clutches of the beast, or let the, let's just call it possession for the sake of this video not getting demonetized, letting that happen. If they do attempt to free their companion with force, the creature may snap her neck. But if they wait too long, something much, much worse is going to happen. So the party has choice paralysis, then gets derailed by a bit of exposition and lore dumping from their new friend, Uncanny Valley Bilbo. Roleplay ensues. UVB tells the party there's going to be a TPK if they don't sacrifice their companion. The players naturally take way too long to choose, and the Eldritch Knight says, "What if I just blast its tail with a ray of frost?" The GM sighs, the rogue and artificer run off, and the party is split. The Game Master then decides Upgrade Andy is going to turn on the party and goes after the artificer. The mage and knight try to stop him, but it's too late. The setback is in place, the artificer fails her role, and the possession takes hold. But on the bright side, in the process, she kindly and safely parks the MacGuffin on the other side of the dungeon, which, by the way, speeds up the clock for crashing into the belt thanks to a well-timed explosion and the way space works. Roleplay over, trick, trap, and puzzle solved? Okay, so I may have lied. There are actually closer to 6 encounters in this movie, but I'm going to consider this the random encounter generated by the choices the players have made thus far. I think this is a really good example of how a potential combat gets turned into a second puzzle or challenge. After consulting the map and failing a few history checks, the remnants of the party decide the best route to the ship is through the horrible hallway of trials. They wait for the DM to finish a few off-screen rolls, think up a plan to get through the hallway of trials, and the Eldritch Knight says, "What if we cast invisibility and try to sneak through?" The GM is getting tired and doesn't want to wait around for another wacky zany plan to form, and at this point just says, "Yeah, that'll probably work." Sure, Andy helps you out, even though he just tried to betray your friends and has a brand new motive. The party passes their stealth check, but the cleric accidentally casts thaumaturgy instead of message, waking up all the mobs they ran away from. Meanwhile, the possession takes hold and the rogue dies trying to solo the big bad. Our cleric gets captured by the surprising and suddenly adolescent big bad who tries to bait the party with another Sophie's Choice. This time the GMPC refuses to open the door and everyone gets mad at the GM, but they move on to the next room. Because once again, this is a movie, we do things out of order, but I actually highly approve of this change in putting the treasure room before the boss fight. In fact, this is a personal hack that I like to apply to any dungeon. Give the party the cool new toys before they get into the big fight. Then they get to use them. And so the party gets a questionable potion, a new magic wand, and the GMPC says there's another way out of here where we don't have to fight the boss monster. And for some reason, they trust Upgrade Andy emphatically, even though he just tried to betray the party, and says, "Let's head through the secret tunnel." But then, the twist hits. The cleric is still alive. One of my favorite ways to shake up a boss fight is to give alternative methods of victory outside of hit the bad guy, and because Alien Romulus is a horror movie, it passes this test with flying colors. We've already learned at this point that these things are hard to kill. They're extremely tactical, and did I mention their blood is acid, and if that melts through the deck, the whole party gets sucked into space. Faced with the choice of leaving the cleric behind or having to go mano-a-mano with the big bad, the mage sticks to her alignment and the Eldritch Knight sacrifices himself to the big bad. But then the mage remembers. She's a good player and she took good notes. She asks the Game Master, "If I activate no gravity mode, then shoot the alien, its blood won't melt the deck and instantly space us, right?" The GM smiles. He loves this idea and is willing to go with the rule of cool on this one. He says yes, but you'll have to make an intelligence test to avoid the acid. She fails, but then remembers she has a bit of luck in her back pocket. She gets a reroll, and it's a nat 20. The GM describes her firing the wand, using the momentum to dodge the acid at the last second, and as the gravity switches back on, it sends the big bad into the void of outer space. And there is much rejoicing. Okay, so the big bad is defeated. The dungeon is over, right? Right? Well, this is Hollywood, and everything has to be bigger, better, and more nightmare fuel-inducing than the last thing, so no. We have our 5 rooms, but the clock is still ticking. Everyone who's still alive gets back into the ship. The mage puts the cleric into stasis and gives UVB the middle finger as they fly away. However, the cleric uses one of the curse potions, and for the sake of this video, we'll just call this a should have been a cliffhanger moment that leads into the next quest. Everyone barely makes it out as the space station crashes into the belt in a glorious $80 million explosion, and there was much rejoicing. The characters who made it out level up, and we put a nice bow on our 5-room dungeon story arc. That way we can use this horrible monster for the next session. Sorry, not sorry. Alright, well that's it for my 5-room dungeon video. Hopefully you feel inspired and you can now see how other movies can inspire you to write your own 5-room dungeons. In my opinion, one of the best ways to have fun creating adventures at your table is to take the things that already inspire you, shave off the serial numbers, and reuse them like that stolen car. So yeah, obviously not a literal 5 rooms in this giant space station, but I think you can now see how there are about 5 major encounters throughout this film. Anyway, I thought this was fun. Hopefully you did too. Go play some Lancer or Mothership and use this zany little adventure I cooked up. Thanks for watching, and by the way, small shout out, if you haven't read the story arc structure in Mothership, it is just good. It's bar none. This is how you should do horror, in my opinion, or like anything that really threatens the players of the party. It's awesome. Check it out. Thanks Dottie from MysticArts and Gobi for putting on the 5-room dungeon jam, and thanks Peter for letting me steal your vibes. Sorry about wherever you are. There's still plenty of time to sign up for free games at Crit. You have no excuse not to play some awesome games with some awesome folks. And don't forget to check out my Quantum Ogrecast wherever you get podcasts. And thank you guys so much for watching. Remember, learn, adapt, and grow.